Let me start with something that will make most financial planners uncomfortable. Two retirees, same country, same economy. One has $1.2 million saved. The other has $200,000. And 5 years later, the millionaire is stressed. The $200,000 retiree is calm. That sounds impossible because we've been taught one simple belief. Retirement success equals a big number. The bigger the number, the safer you are. The smaller the number, the closer you are to disaster. So if someone retires with just $200,000, the assumption is obvious. They're doomed, right? But here's the question nobody asks. If $200,000 only generates about $8,000 per year using the 4% rule, and Social Security averages under $2,000 per month, why aren't millions of retirees broke? Why aren't they homeless? Why does the system look fragile on paper but stable in real life? That's what we're going to uncover. Because the truth is this. Most retirees aren't surviving because they saved enough. They're surviving because retirement doesn't work the way you think it does. And once you understand that shift, everything changes. Let's challenge the outdated belief first. The belief says you need at least $1 million to retire comfortably. That number gets repeated so often, it feels like law. But when researchers analyze data from sources like the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the median retirement savings for households nearing retirement is nowhere near $1 million. It's closer to $200,000. And median matters, because the median represents the true middle, not the inflated average pulled up by outliers. So, if $200,000 is normal, then either half the country is walking toward financial collapse or the $1 million rule is outdated. And here's the uncomfortable reality. The $1 million rule was built for a very specific lifestyle model. A retirement filled with travel, dining out, maintaining a large suburban home, replacing cars every few years. It assumes your expenses stay high.
But that assumption is where the math quietly breaks, because for most retirees, expenses don't stay high, they compress. Here's the part nobody models correctly. Retirement changes spending behavior completely. When people stop working, three major expenses often shrink dramatically. First, commuting. No fuel, no daily lunches out, no dry cleaning for office clothes. Second, payroll taxes and retirement contributions disappear. You're no longer saving 10 to 15% of your income. You're no longer paying into Social Security or Medicare from wages. Third, debt often declines. Many retirees enter retirement with their mortgage paid off or nearly paid off. Now imagine someone who earned $70,000 per year before retirement. After taxes and savings, maybe they were actually living on $45,000. Once retired, they might need even less because work-related costs vanish. Suddenly, replacing 80% of income isn't necessary. Replacing 60% might be enough. That subtle difference changes everything. And this is the first survival lever retirees use. Lifestyle compression. Not sacrifice, compression. They don't feel poorer. They simply need less. But that's only the beginning, because here's where it gets more interesting. A retiree with $200,000 doesn't rely on one income source. They rely on layers. Layer 1 is Social Security. According to projections from the Social Security Administration, the average benefit for retirees in 2025 is expected to hover around $1,900 to $2,000 per month. For a married couple, that can mean $3,000 to $4,000 combined. Now add $8,000 annually from savings. Add perhaps a small pension from a government or union job, maybe $500 per month. Now the income stack looks different. It's not luxurious, but it's stable. And stability, not extravagance, is the true goal for most retirees. But there's a second lever that quietly makes $200,000 stretch further, and almost no one talks about it. geography. Where you retire matters more than how much you saved. A $2,500 monthly income in a high-cost city feels tight. In a lower-cost region, it can feel comfortable. Many retirees relocate. Not dramatically, not across the world, but strategically. They move closer to family. They move to states with lower taxes. They move to smaller towns. A paid-off $250,000 home in a moderate-cost area is radically different from renting in a major metropolitan center. This is geographic arbitrage. It doesn't require more money. It requires flexibility. And retirees with smaller nest eggs understand this intuitively. They optimize lifestyle before they optimize returns. Now let's expose the hidden assumption that scares people. The assumption says, if I only have $200,000, I must draw it down aggressively and risk running out. But here's what many retirees actually do. They don't follow a rigid 4% rule. They use flexible withdrawals. In strong market years, they take a little more. In weak years, they tighten spending slightly. They adjust. Retirement isn't static, it breathes. And here's something most people don't realize. Spending naturally declines in later retirement years. Studies consistently show that retirees spend more in their 60s and early 70s, and less in their late 70s and 80s. Travel decreases, big purchases decline, lifestyle stabilizes. This natural spending curve reduces the risk of catastrophic depletion, which means the standard run out of money at 90 fear model often overestimates risk. The real secret isn't having more money, it's designing retirement to need less of it. Let's talk about part-time income. This one surprises people. Retirement today rarely means zero work. It often means selective work, consulting, seasonal roles, freelancing, hobby income. Even $10,000 to $15,000 per year earned casually can dramatically reduce pressure on savings. And here's the psychological shift. When income becomes optional rather than mandatory, stress drops. You're not working to survive, you're working to supplement. That difference is enormous. Many retirees with $200,000 bridge their first few years this way. They delay heavy withdrawals, they allow investments to continue compounding, they build cushion. Now let's address risk, because fear of healthcare costs is real, and healthcare is the biggest wild card in retirement. But retirees become eligible for Medicare at 65. While it doesn't cover everything, it dramatically reduces catastrophic insurance risk. Out-of-pocket expenses remain, but they're not unlimited exposure like pre-65 private insurance. This reduces one of the biggest uncertainties. Add in emergency savings and conservative asset allocation, and the picture stabilizes further. But here's the lever that changes everything, and almost no one calculates it properly. Time. Not lifespan. Sequence. If markets perform well in the first 5 to 7 years of retirement, even a $200,000 portfolio can stabilize and grow. If markets decline early, retirees often adjust spending temporarily. This dynamic flexibility reduces failure probability more than static math suggests. In other words, retirement success is less about the starting balance and more about behavior during the first decade. Disciplined retirees outperform rigid models. Now, let's reframe something important. The narrative says retiring with less is failure. But what if retiring with less simply reflects a different definition of enough? Many retirees are no longer chasing accumulation. They're chasing time. They garden. They volunteer. They babysit grandchildren. They cook at home. These activities cost little, but they produce high life satisfaction. The millionaire retiree who tries to maintain a pre-retirement consumption level often experiences more financial anxiety than the modest retiree who aligned expectations early, because expectations determine pressure, and pressure determines stress. Another quiet survival lever, housing strategy. Some retirees downsize. Others move in with adult children. Multi-generational living is rising, not because of failure, but because it makes financial and emotional sense. Shared utilities, shared childcare, shared support.
That reduces fixed expenses dramatically, and fixed expenses are the true enemy of a small nest egg. The lower your fixed monthly burn rate, the more resilient you become. Now, let's address debt. Retirees who succeed on $200,000 usually enter retirement with minimal high-interest debt. They eliminate credit cards. They simplify. They reduce financial friction. This isn't flashy advice, but it's powerful. A retiree with no mortgage, no car payment, and no revolving debt can live on far less income than someone carrying fixed obligations. Freedom isn't just about assets, it's about low obligations. Here's what most people miss. Retirement math is fragile. Retirement behavior is flexible. And flexibility beats fragile math. Let's zoom out. When you see headlines about needing $1.5 million to retire, ask this: who is that lifestyle built for? Often, it's built for someone who maintains high fixed costs, stays in expensive locations, travels frequently, assumes constant spending. But that's not the median retiree. The median retiree adapts, and adaptation is underrated. Now, I want you to imagine two scenarios. Scenario 1. You retire with $1 million but maintain $80,000 per year in expenses. Scenario 2. You retire with $200,000 and need $35,000 per year. Which retiree sleeps better? It depends less on assets and more on burn rate. That's the quiet truth. So does this mean you should only aim for $200,000? Absolutely not. But it does mean something important. It means the number alone doesn't determine survival. The plan does. Retirees who succeed with modest savings share common traits. They budget deliberately, they monitor spending, they adjust early, they avoid lifestyle inflation before retirement, they plan Social Security timing strategically. Delaying Social Security even a few years can permanently increase lifetime benefits. That single decision can matter more than squeezing out another 1% investment return. Strategy beats obsession with accumulation. Let's close with calm realism. Retiring with $200,000 is not ideal. It offers less margin for error. It requires awareness. But it is not automatic collapse. Millions of retirees are living proof, not because they cracked some secret investment code, not because markets magically saved them, but because they aligned their lifestyle with their resources. They accepted reality early. They avoided denial. They built around what they had. And that mindset is more powerful than a headline number. If you're watching this and you're not at $1 million, you're not broken. You're not uniquely behind. You're standing in the statistical middle. The real question isn't, is $200,000 enough? The real question is, what kind of retirement do I actually want? Because once you define that clearly, the math becomes manageable. And manageable math is far less terrifying than mythical numbers. Retirement isn't about winning. It's about stability. It's about control. It's about reducing financial fragility. And most of all, it's about understanding that money alone doesn't determine peace. Alignment does. That's how people retire with $200,000 and don't go broke. And now you understand why.